Hello, and welcome to everyone to the second Virgin Disruptors debate. Thank you all for being here in the room with us. Thanks for everyone that's on live stream. And thank you so much to the many, many people that have already given their thoughts via virgin.com. And we are live from San Francisco, the amazing city that has given birth to so many of the innovations that have defined our age. And over the last decade, many of those innovations have completely launched us into a radical, transparent, and interconnected world that we live in today. So more than ever before, we're aware of the issues and the many opportunities that face us as human beings. So certainly the next decade must be the decade of positive disruption and action. We have the knowledge, we have the skills, we have the resources to make sure that we tackle some of our global challenges, but also to make sure we embrace those opportunities. But one of the things we're going to need in that process is we're going to need to really master the art of collaboration. And we're also going to need to have a huge dose of entrepreneurial spirit. So why then do we often strangle that entrepreneurial spirit through government regulation, through red tape? And how can we support entrepreneurs to really, truly create this unbelievable army of positive disruptors around the world? So you are in for a great debate today. And I just wanted to say a few thank yous that helped make this happen, to the partners that helped make this happen. Firstly, to Google+, secondly, to Virgin America, to Virgin Mobile, to the Virgin.com team, and also a huge thank you to New Black. New Black is an entrepreneurial organization that's truly disrupting the contemporary furniture space as well as the lighting design space. And they are one of the first to really bring products from the creators to consumers. And I also want to say a big thanks to Guy. You all know who Guy is. He's an incredible innovator and entrepreneur. And he is now shaking up the design space and democratizing design through his role as chief evangelist at Canva. So over to Guy.
Oh, no, I have a mic. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you. This is one of my favorite things to do, although I'm not used to working in a circle. I truly enjoy moderating panels, and I believe the role of the moderator is to get out of the way of the panelists. So I'm going to sort of catalyze some great discussion and get out of the way. I'd also like to welcome the people who are now hanging out with us on Google+, my favorite social media site. Where's Marvin? Where's Marvin? I'm going to get this social media plug in there, all right? And I'd like to first introduce the guests. Shall we go by what? Age? Who's the oldest? We could go, there are many algorithms we could use. We could go by age. We could go by least amount of hair.
That's okay.
Well, why don't we start with Richard, because he has been so instrumental in making this happen. Richard, I want you to know that I carry this with me wherever I go. It's like, okay. So Richard, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit.
And let's see, I control everything Virgin. In my dreams.
Yeah, right. That's a good illusion. All right, so Megan?
I'm Megan Smith. I've been at Google for over 10 years, always working on the beginning of things. These days, I'm one of the leaders at Google X, started something called SolveForX, and everything that I work on tends to be related to either innovation itself and working with entrepreneurs, solving energy things, whatever, agriculture, et cetera, or trying to get more people included in the work that we do or aware of, helping youth know that these amazing jobs are here if they want to go for it, helping more women and minorities join these fields, et cetera. So those are my two major themes across tons of topics.
Why aren't you wearing glass?
I don't work on the glass team, but I felt like we wanted to talk.
Did you drive yourself today, or did the?
I very much wanted to be driven, but we're still prototyping.
Okay.
But it's an incredible team watching that happen, and it's actually along these themes of moonshots. You know, could you use technology to solve a problem? In the case of the self-driving car, billions of people wasting time. Literally billions in traffic, people being killed, et cetera. Is there some kind of technology out there in the case of the car, you know, robotics, et cetera, real-time mapping, that would let you actually allow a car to drive ourselves? So we're trying at Google X and in general, SolveForX, how do we help these tech pioneers, these moonshot pioneers do their things, which leads to Nest.
Yes, Tony from Nest.
Yes, I'm Tony Fadell. I'm CEO and founder of Nest Labs, now also with Google, with Megan. We're working again together. We worked together almost 25 years at a
Right
at a
out of
company.
school.
Right out of school, and now we're working again together at Google. I've been in the Valley 25 years, and most notably, I led the team that created the first 18 generations of the iPod, and then the 3 generations of the iPhone. And now Nest, and our learning thermostat, and our Nest Protect smoke and CO alarm. So we're having a lot of fun innovating and disrupting the world and changing things.
What he's doing is incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
And what it could do for to deal with climate change, you know, is incredible. If everybody could take his products. So
Yeah.
really exciting.
Thank you.
Do you and Megan play volleyball in the sand at Google every once in a while? No? No
We haven't
sand
done that yet,
volleyball?
but we can
We're programming the robots to do that for us.
Okay, all right. We had a sudden change with our next guest. Dave Evans was supposed to be here from Cisco, but he had some personal issues come up, so he couldn't be with us. But instead we have Jim Grubb, who, you know, I can see your formal title is VP of Emerging Technologies, but he's kind of like the sizzle and the demo guy of Cisco, right? So
Yeah, well, you know, I have a fun job at Cisco, and I get to help our CEO, John Chambers, to show folks what you can do with technology. So I am the demo guy, and I get up on stage with him, and we often take new and emerging capabilities and then build prototypes that just show folks how the technology works and what you can do with the technology. You know, a lot of times folks don't know what the underlying capabilities are, and so there's innovation that goes undone because they don't know what the art of the possible is. And so it's a great job because I love to tinker, and I love to, I'd actually love to work with Megan at X. You know, that's my kind of fun stuff. But I'm in a unique sort of place because everybody at Cisco wants to get their new technology into the boss's keynote, right? You know, and so I have people coming and knocking on my door all the time, showing me the newest, coolest things, and not only from Cisco, because we have, you know, thousands of partners around the world that integrate our technologies, and they come and show us their latest things. So I get to have a lot of fun learning about the new technology.
And you get paid to do this?
I get paid to do that.
Are we far away from the day where, you know, Guy can be sitting at home and doing a 3D holographic presentation in Mumbai without flying to India?
And we're practically there.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. The news. Right, yeah.
Not that you wouldn't want to fly.
Then you can fly,
Need a little travel.
vacation.
You know, any new display technology that comes, this is the great thing. We get to take any new display technology and hook it to our.
She used to work for Virgin.
We can hook it to our telepresence and carry, and that wall can become the screen. That wall can become the screen, and so, and I'm excited.
For some reasons why people need to go.
There's still a need to develop trust. So right, and that's happening right here, right, and rapport.
100% agree.
Yeah, and so it's a combination. Of
I've
those
already
things.
lost control of this. You said you were 10 minutes into it, and I've lost control. Leila, you're next. Please introduce yourself.
Sure.
Tell us about yourself.
I'm Leila Janah. My background is in poverty alleviation. I used to work at the World Bank in development economics, and I was really frustrated by traditional approaches to serving the poor, and had an aha moment one day when I was working on an outsourcing project in India. I met a guy in a big call center who was commuting in from a slum, from Dharavi, which is where Slumdog Millionaire was filmed. And I thought, if this guy can take calls for British Airways, then surely there must be more like him. Pardon you for saying that.
Is British Airways an airline?
You know, if we had really good sound people, they would have muted her when she said
I'm sure
The Virgin website's so good. Customer service, they don't need calls.
Let that be expunged from the record. I apologize. So that inspired me to start a social
You
venture
probably won't
called.
be invited for the next Disruptors panel.
Well, you always need the token nonprofit person, so I'm sure I'll be invited, right?
Yeah.
So I started Samasource, which is a nonprofit that connects very low-income women and youth in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean to work over the internet. So right now, as we speak, we have people in northern Uganda working inside shipping containers, which have computers and Wi-Fi, for Getty Images, for Google, for TripAdvisor, for some of the biggest tech companies in the world, doing small tasks. We call it micro work. And through that business model, we helped 20,000 people escape poverty. And we decided to launch a local version called Sama USA, which is just right around the corner here in the Bayview, which has been able to increase incomes by 20% for low-income people. We have a third venture called Sama Hope, which is a crowdfunding site for medical treatment. And Google.org is one of our funders. So I guess we think of the social side of innovation, and some of the challenges in our sector are around getting people to realize that innovating around the business models in this sector, and not just around high technology, but taking this technology and putting it to use to serve the poor is I think, one of our biggest challenges.
Crowdfunding for medical sounds a brilliant idea.
I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, really, at scale. It's like Kickstarter for surgeries.
Yeah, fantastic.
So is there a story behind the word Sama? Is there like some Hindi word for help, or I don't know, I'm making this up.
Oh, you're so close. It's Sanskrit for equal. And it's actually the root word for same and balanced and level in many languages. And this is what it looks like.
What, that word?
That's the word, Sama. Yeah.
You know,
I saw that on a captcha once. No.
And a Samasource worker might have typed it in for you.
I didn't have the right keyboard that day.
well, just this notion of thinking about equality and thinking about entrepreneurial skill everywhere and networking it, I think is what the 21st century is about in many ways. And we were just talking with a colleague about refugee camps. And you know, the 20th century way to think of a refugee camp is all these victims have had a horrible time, now they need to be gathered and services come. But after, you know, people have clothing and food and they really could do other things, but the legal way we've set it up is to keep them as victims. I mean, the average stay in a refugee camp is 12 years.
12 years?
Yeah. So why shouldn't we think of it as a town that very sadly grew suddenly and start thinking about it very differently, entrepreneurially? We were just talking about the Zatari refugee camp on the Jordanian border near Syria, and some work that's going on there to really flip the model. There's a $30 million GDP that's illegal in the camp. The entrepreneurial Syrians in the camp are doing things, but the way that we've structured it, we just keep bringing aid in this old way. And so Samasource is such a good example of equality. Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of notes up there saying, pity the sound is really poor, and which just seems a pity. If somebody who's doing the sound can try to get the sound better, that'd be good.
The spell checking is poor.
Is there an echo? Maybe internet people tell us.
Do we have to project?
Anyway, don't worry. We'll carry on.
Well, to that point, I mean, what's the big challenge with working in refugee camps for us is that technically, according to international law, refugees are often not allowed to work. So you have these people sitting in camps. We used to work in Dadaab, which is the largest refugee camp in the world. It's on the border of Kenya and Somalia, and it's a breeding ground for terrorists. Unfortunately, Al-Shabaab recruits a lot of terrorists, and some of the Red Sea pirate groups recruit terrorists from this camp. And it's actually kind of logical, because if you're a young man growing up in this camp, there are 0 job opportunities. I met kids who were there their entire lives, who'd gone to high school and were taking online college classes in the computer lab there, and they were prevented from getting jobs. So of course people are going to turn to these other methods of earning income. So I think there's some regulatory things that have to shift before innovation is even possible for some of these communities.
So let's fulfill our moral obligation to the pre-marketing of this panel by answering the first question, which is, do you believe that entrepreneurs have lost the will to innovate? It's supposed to be a debate. I don't know who's on opposite sides. So we'll start off with you, and let's talk about it.
I don't believe that entrepreneurs have lost the will to innovate at all. I think I've never known a more exciting time for innovation. I think that there is help needed in many countries to get entrepreneurs up on their feet, and in the UK we've got something called Virgin Startup, which Guy, you've got to look at me when I'm talking. All right. Which I think is which is enabling, helping people get up and get going. And getting them funding to get up and get going, giving them mentors and so on. So, and the government have actually started giving entrepreneurial loans instead of just loans for students going to university, which I would suggest that many other countries should follow suit on that and will follow suit in the years to come.
Okay. Megan?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's always been amazing entrepreneurs in the world, forever doing astonishing things at all levels. Social entrepreneurs, I always say Claire Burton didn't need computers to do her amazing thing. But now that we do have computers and network and interconnection, it really has changed things in an extraordinary way. One of my favorite innovation examples is just the science fair kids that do our Google Science Fair. I mean, I did science fair, and I did always green energy, and I had a set of books at the library downtown Buffalo, New York, right? That's what I could know. And these kids can know the state-of-the-art, watch videos, email with faculty anywhere in the world, or innovators. And the level of science and innovation and entrepreneurship and ingenuity that comes out of 13 to 17-year-olds is so impressive. So I feel like there's a bit of a divide, though, where there's a set of people who know about this, and they're in every country. They're finding, like we're talking about the Virgin Startup, or they're finding Startup Weekend, or Google Developer Group, or they're finding that. And then there's a whole bunch of other people who don't know about that, and we need to reach out to them, I think, is one of the key parts. The other part is for the countries that don't have, like here we are in Silicon Valley, so we have our alumni, our serial entrepreneurs who become angel investors and venture capitalists. They can reach back, because as an entrepreneur, you need money, but mostly you need teammates and help and coaching. It's actually, there's dumb money and smart money. And so helping use the network so that the places in the world that don't have as many alums, their alums maybe are diaspora who left because they needed to go at the time, to reach back and really lift those entrepreneurs, I think will just only accelerate this. So I'm a card-carrying optimist.
All right.
And I think entrepreneurship's alive and well and growing.
You know that a week from tomorrow is the Maker Faire here. So Maker Faire.
Every year with my kids.
Maker Faire is just, I hope all of you go to the Maker Faire.
It's amazing.
Just amazing. Have you ever been to a Maker Faire? Do you know what it is? It's kind of like Burning Man for geeks.
It's absolutely.
With more clothes.
And nobody's naked.
With more clothes.
Thankfully.
And less drugs.
By the way, I'm surrounded by geeks here. I'm the one ordinary businessman, ordinary entrepreneur.
Yeah, right. You're just a regular run-of-the-mill billionaire at night.
I'm going to talk about other businesses.
Geek, airline geek,
Yeah,
music
okay, who
geek.
happens to own an island. Yeah, it's just like anybody else.
See, I'm being bullied now.
On Megan's topic, one of the things we're doing, we've launched a couple of different prizes for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So we build some things internally, we buy some technologies, and we're also trying to nurture that kind of growth. So we have a $250,000 prize where the entrepreneur gets the prize, but then they also get coaching and they get all of the infrastructure. And we're actually building physical places that people have to fly to, by the way, to come together and to get that nurturing and to get the all the support systems. Sometimes it's just a space for people to work in, even.
Jim, I caution you, this is not supposed to be a Cisco ad, okay?
Oh, okay. Well,
This is about answering the questions, have entrepreneurs lost the will? I just want to remind you subtly. Okay. Okay.
So when I look at innovation, I really see there's a whole set of people now in Kickstarter and on Indiegogo who are able to take their ideas and get them crowdfunded. And it's a whole new level of innovation, because before, when you came up with an interesting idea and you pitched it to venture capital, like, it's not big enough. It's really not for our space. It's not. Now you can actually find those 1,000 or 10,000 or even 100,000 people who will actually back you and believe in what you want to build, because they believe in it too, because they want it. And that gets the flywheel started for that entrepreneur in a major way. Because a lot of times, and this happened to me when I was doing companies in the 90s, you go around with this idea and it was just from door to door to VC, and they just didn't want to talk to you because it was just too crazy, it was too wacky, it wasn't of the moment that everyone wanted to fund. So it's really interesting to see the innovation there, and then it multiplies all around the world.
Okay.
because you can get the resources, because people can find those projects.
So how's this for Meta? We crowdfunded our crowdfunding site on Indiegogo.
There you go.
Yeah, Sama Home. But I would say, one of the challenges from a social entrepreneur's perspective, not to be a Debbie Downer, but the way that funding flows into nonprofits is so broken. And one of the challenges, I think, is that we don't have enough incentives for good people to move into this sector and work on some of these big problems. And I'll give you an example, because I heard that you're going to a prison tomorrow in Blythe. Prisons, I think, are one of our biggest challenges in this country. We incarcerate more people than any civilized nation should. And one of the reasons for that, I believe, is that we have a for-profit prison industry that's incentivized to keep heads in beds. And I think this area is a fruitful place for social innovation. Imagine if we had charter prisons, just like we had charter schools, and if you could incentivize really smart entrepreneurs like all of you to work on these problems by creating some kind of a financial incentive, or maybe even having a government crowdfunding site where instead of government running a lot of these big social programs, you could set up a pool of funds and then crowdfund social innovators to build better models. But the funding system in the nonprofit and public sector is just so broken that I think it completely prevents innovation from happening. It squelches it.
When you crowdfunding, what did the initial investors get? Because I understand if you get 10% off a Pebble watch, but what did those people who...
Other than karma points?
Yeah.
That's a great question. A lot of people ask what you get as a nonprofit employee when you don't get equity. We gave away a few benefits. We used, I think, the power of social proof. So we tried to highlight on our page, on one of our pages on the website, everybody who donated at a certain level. And then at certain levels, you actually got physical gifts. The highest level was a gift that was made in Sierra Leone, and one of the first medical partners on our site that provides surgeries for women who have horrible birth injuries around the childbirth process. There's a center that has these women make beautiful bags, and so we sent bags to the people who gave at the highest level. What we found is that people really don't give. I mean, my experience is that people don't always give on Kickstarter just to get the perk. They often give because they believe in the entrepreneur's story, and they want to be part of it, and they want to say one day, I'm part of the Pebble Watch, story. And I think giving them the sense that they're part of a story is sort of a moral benefit that outweighs any physical or tangible benefit you could get.
I agree with that.
I like on the prison front, sorry, I know it's slightly off cue, but there was something that somebody pointed out to me yesterday, that is that if you're wealthy and you have a problem and you go to court and you get a bail set for you, you can obviously afford to pay the bail. If you're very poor and you go to court and the bail's set for you, you go to prison for 3 or 4 months or 4 or 5 months while you wait for your trial. You're still innocent until proved guilty. And it's just one of the many sort of self-perpetuating problems that exist around the world that need to be addressed.
I bet someone has put on Indiegogo, help me make bail. I bet you that's happened.
Well, they should, but the system should be changed. I mean, if somebody's not a danger to society, and they're poor, they shouldn't have to put up bail. And it's these sorts of things which we've all got to get out there and get changed in us.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next few years with Colorado and Washington, because theoretically there's going to be a lot less people arrested, right? And
I mean, I think what's happened in Colorado and Washington is brilliant, and they've got the law's got to sort of speed up there to try to make sure that money can exchange hands and all these sorts of things.
There are a lot of entrepreneurs there now.
Yeah, but I mean, but the great thing is that America's got more prisoners than China, and most of those people are in there for drug-related crimes, and drugs should be treated as a health problem, not a criminal problem. And countries that treat it as a health problem, not a criminal problem, are getting on top of the problem. I mean, Portugal has not put anybody in prison for 12 years now. Doesn't matter whether it's heroin or cocaine or marijuana, and they're rapidly reducing the amount of people taking drugs, and society's benefiting from it. And nobody's breaking and entering to get their heroin fix, because the states supply the heroin, they supply the clean needles, they make sure they don't get HIV. Anyway, we're going off to think, but this
is the drug panel.
Specifically in prison, I've come across actually recently a bunch of different talented people. I always think people do things. You know, it's people who innovate. And there's been some people I've met in the area of prison reform. But I think to your point of the industrial complex, this sort of way that it's set up right now is preventing that. But here in San Quentin, there's a group called The Last Mile that's working on entrepreneurship with the prison population to help them start these practices of, practice makes permanent in entrepreneurship. As you start to learn how to do it, you learn how to do it. It's apprentice, journeyman, master. And so helping these people find their passion and think about what they want to do when they get out and begin to be on that track instead of getting out and getting into the same old thing and being back. And it's very creative.
What if you had a charter prison that was incentivized by recidivism rates, right? So the people who ran the prison got paid more if there were lower recidivism. I mean, that would totally turn the model on its head. Or a charter prison where prisoners would be tracked into job, categories. They could do digital work, for example, and do the same kind of photo tagging that we're doing in Uganda, gain skills, and then leave prison with a job. But this stuff doesn't happen, I think, because we so often operate in the default mode. And the default mode in America is if you're trying to do anything around prison reform as a politician, you're soft on crime.
I'm going to prison tomorrow, and I've been told, and I've been told I'm not allowed to wear jeans. I mean, I just find this whole you're not allowed to wear jeans thing is I don't know. I can't remember. Somewhere locally, anyway.
Yeah, I did the Last Mile thing. I spoke for them, and so we went on a tour of San Quentin, and it's just like the movies. I mean, you turn the corner in San Quentin, and boom, there's like one group of people lifting weights, one group of people on the track, one people at the benches, all segregated by race, and there is nothing between you and them. I was with Robert Scoble. It was a blogger's tour of San Quentin. So I turned to Scoble. I said, Scoble, if they all decided to attack us, I don't have to outrun them. I just have to outrun you.
And that would be kind of easy.
Yeah, it was a.
But this is the same, back to the Sama point, equal.
Yeah.
Why aren't we thinking of these people as teammates in solving their own problem with us and setting up systems, helping them be part of that, helping entrepreneurs do these things, same as the refugee camp, same as anything. Just being really smart, because humans are entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
It's in us.
So let's throw in a little technology here, and we are going to take a question from Elmira Beyrasili. She is the author of Steve Jobs Lives in Pakistan. That's interesting. She has a question about innovation and obstacles for entrepreneurs in the developing world, and she is streaming in from New York. So, here we go.
Hi, everyone in San Francisco. My question is about, as Guy pointed out, about obstacles. And obstacles confound all entrepreneurs. Anyone who has started a business has come up against some sort of barrier that has made operating a business difficult. In my work, I found that entrepreneurs come up against lack of skilled talent, corruption, lack of capital, weak rule of law, and governance. The one I found that is the most troubling is the status quo. How does an entrepreneur disrupt or innovate today when the system and the rules and regulations make it so difficult for him or her to do so?
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about regulations. So.
I mean, big companies try to create keep the status quo, and for an entrepreneur, you've got to use every trick in the book to try to overcome not just the big company themselves, but the big company's relationship with authority. So, I mean, right now, Virgin America is trying to get permission to fly into various airports, and Love Field in Dallas, Southwest have 90% of the slots. The competition authorities have said Virgin should be allowed to fly in, but the local authority, got a good relationship with Southwest, and we're having a real battle. But at least today you can use the internet, to get out there and campaign.
Well, think of Uber. So.
Yeah, well, Uber actually had the same battle before us in the same city, and finally they won through. And I think ultimately, we will win through. But but these are battles that any smaller company that's taking on bigger companies have to fight. And at least we now have social media, and if you've got right on your side, I think ultimately you should be able to win.
Any more thoughts on regulation?
Yeah, if you look at Elon, right, at Tesla, right, Elon Musk trying to just sell cars online in certain states. You'd think that would be absolutely easy to do.
Right.
But every single governmental body is fighting them in those regions because it's fueled by those incumbents already, those business incumbents. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make, but we have to go and, as Richard was saying, take to social media, and it's starting to turn the tide. And
I'll tell a funny story how we overcame, in South Africa, we had the same problem, and every year I would go and see a different transport minister, and every year they would say, yeah, we really want you to come, and I knew that when I left the office that would be the end of it. So about 10 years ago I went there, and the minister said, yeah, we really want you to come. So I decided on this occasion to throw a press conference, massive press conference, and I congratulated him in the press conference for wanting us to come, and announced that we were coming. And by that evening, he had to give in, and so Virgin flew to South Africa. But sometimes you need to, you need to do tricks like that.
yeah, you can't just play by the rules because somebody else made them in their favor.
Exactly.
And I think I have to say hi, Elmira, and give a shout out to the organization she used to work at called Endeavor, which is an amazing nonprofit that funds innovative entrepreneurs in developing countries. So it's great to see her again. But on the social side of this, one of the biggest challenges we faced was convincing very traditional foundations. I'm happy to report that Megan did not represent one of those foundations. .org is, I think, really amazing in this space. But one large foundation, which shall remain nameless, basically laughed me out of the room when I said that I was going to get women from urban slums in Africa to do work for big tech companies. They said things like, oh, these women, how are they going to learn to use computers? They need water before they can get jobs. This is crazy. This was 2009. So not that long ago. And so I said, okay, fine. So we're going to do it anyway. So we went to actually a refugee camp, this place Dadaab, and we set up a program teaching these refugees to do digital work. And they beat their competition with one of our customers. They were doing tasks for Microsoft, and they did a better job than this platform called Mechanical Turk, which had some American workers. So then we took that evidence back to the funder, and we said, well, you said that these people couldn't do it, but look at the results. And I think in the face of such evidence, it's really hard to say no. And I think a lot of the best innovators have had to do that with big regulatory bodies. Have had to go testify before Congress and say, well, these are the results, and are you going to really deprive the public of this amazing new innovation for some stupid rule? But it takes smashing those boundaries sometimes.
What happened with you? Wasn't there a lot of lawsuits? And
Oh yeah, so for us,
what was all that about?
We're stirring the pot. We're going into industries that are large industries that haven't changed in decades. And when you go in, and a little guy, they think they can. Some companies are predatory. They see a small company, they see innovation, and then they will put lawsuits on you, right? Just to try to throw tax in your way to.
By the way, it's understandable that big companies are going to try to squash small companies. What's not understandable is governments not standing up to small companies. And that's really one of the principal reasons for government is to create a situation where they have very, very strong anti-competitive laws to stop big companies being predatory on small companies. And they should sharpen the pencil and make it less expensive for small companies to have to fight it, to have a maybe somebody that small companies can go to get quick decisions on these things and get because otherwise it's so easy for big companies to squash small companies.
Yeah, we were very lucky that we had the right resources at our disposal because we had gone through this before over decades.
But what could they? I don't understand. What could they? You're making a thermostat. What? I could see people might get into.
They take patents out of some patent treasure trove that they don't practice at all. They use them as weapons. It's just weapons, taking them out of their file cabinets, throwing them at you, and say, now go defend yourself for millions of dollars to show how you're not infringing on these patents that they don't even use. So, there's one regulation, but just the patent system itself needs reform so that small companies can actually thrive. Because these innovations are not just, are important. Are absolutely important, and it's usually small companies that can bring that to bear. But when they're just squashed out, and a lot of times they're squashed out and no innovation is actually coming out. Like, it's not like this large company is absolutely doing anything in the customer's benefit. They're just trying to get rid of the noise to keep them on top. It's absolutely ludicrous.
How does Cisco continue to try to break the status quo?
In terms of, from a patent perspective?
In terms of innovation, just generally. How do you,
in general?
You're so successful, you're so big, how do you, move this large thing?
As I said, there's a couple things. We do a lot of innovation internally and within our own businesses. And of course, a lot of that is in software that's deep down in the technology. But we also buy companies when we found that we missed a transition, that we didn't see some new interesting thing that comes along. We've had a lot of this year in particular, great acquisitions with the security technologies and things. And then we partner, of course, when we, we make infrastructure. We do make endpoints and collaboration and things, but we're really an infrastructure company. We really think about just connecting the unconnected. And so we partner with companies that build more vertical solutions. And then we do these kinds of things to spur innovation, like these prize-type competitions that we've done. Recently around the Internet of Everything, we're setting up innovation centers all around the world in different places to foster all of the new things that we're going to be able to do, with all the data. But that brings up a point, and that is that, as inventors, as we start to connect all this stuff, we think we have privacy concerns around data now, and all this tracking, and everything you do is keeping track of you and everything. But as the entrepreneurs, we have the responsibility to do the right thing with that data. Any technology can be used for good or evil, and we've got to do the right things with those data. And the companies that do the right things with the data will be the ones that are successful in the long term. But because if we don't, we'll have regulations that will come that will shut down a lot of innovation and not allow us to do good things with all of this data.
On that basis, government should be shut down.
Yeah. May, tell us about Google X and disrupting the status quo with Google X, and like what, from the outside looking in, you go to the Vince Vaughn movie, I mean, all that kind of stuff, but like, what is it? Is it glass? Is it self-driving cars? Is it disruption? What's going on there?
We're standing on the shoulders of whole Google, but it's an approach, which we sometimes call these technology moonshots. And it's not unlike, technology moonshots have happened. I'm from Buffalo, so I always think of Nikola Tesla using Niagara Falls to light the city, to demonstrate modern electrification. Like, how do you think of a big idea, in the case of Tesla, all of our electricity, systems. In the case of, some of my colleagues who work on the self-driving car or Google Glass or things, they're trying to get to this moonshot, this idea that's out there, and it's going to take a while to get there. But how can you get started? And I don't mean research. Sometimes we call it kind of venture academia, because you're taking things that have lived. Self-driving car is a good example where, DARPA challenges and these ideas have lived in research for a long time. But how can you get moving? Like Kennedy with the moonshot itself. How can you get people moving in a direction to ship this as a product or as a platform? And so we're really trying to find not only these sort of amazing research people, but we sometimes call them Peter or Petra Pan with PhD, and sort of these techie innovator, sort of entrepreneur types and other kinds of teammates, and get moving. So, since I'm using the car as an example, we've driven more than 500,000 miles now. Like, get on the road and start iterating. A lot of people say design is the new MBA. The entry points for makers and for doing things are at a point where you can prototype. Some people, another example, Google Glass. A lot of people might think it could take you a year or two to put together the first prototype. That team did that in an hour and a half. So they just took apart stuff and so that you can design and play with things and start to really feel what this could be, and then what can be the near-term milestone. What's Mercury? What's Gemini? What's Apollo? What are the things we can do first to get there? If that makes sense.
How is it driven? I mean, is it like anarchy and just engineers decide to do stuff at Google X, or does Larry have a plan?
Larry's a big part of X, but Sergey's really the lead for X. I think he's very focused on a little more on hardware, obviously, and things that could really have great impact on the world. We have a group called Rapid Eval, which has engineers in it that is looking at, I work a lot with them, looking at different ideas. Project Loon, the balloon project, came out of that team. So being able to prototype and demo and work early and nest in these other teams, prototyping is critical. So you can see what it is you're talking about, not just a bunch of spreadsheets and that. So I think X, like all of Google, like all of our tech industry, is trying to solve problems in the world. And the X team specifically is really focused on these moonshots in this way. And so you see a collection of hardware-centric, change the world projects.
Richard, how do you decide? I mean, you start with an airline, then you decide what music and bride, and what goes through your mind where you decide to do a Virgin something?
I think if we feel we can make a real difference, then we'll dive in and try to shake up an industry. So, I mean, Virgin America, airlines were not that great in the States, so we thought, let's set up an airline that hopefully, can be the kind of airline that I'd like to fly and my friends would like to fly, and if that's the case, hopefully it will succeed. And we've done that in quite a few different industries.
Someday there could be a Virgin prison system.
Yeah, I think I think we'd leave. I think generally speaking, we'd leave the doors unlocked. With a few exceptions. No, look. I mean, now we try to come up with with ideas that will potentially change the world, and we're in that fortunate position where we're able to do that, and we don't want to waste that position. So, I mean, for instance, we set up something called the Virgin Earth Prize, which is a $25 million prize to try to encourage engineers and technicians to come up with a way of getting carbon out of the Earth's atmosphere. Mm-hmm. If we can actually get enough carbon out of the Earth's atmosphere in some clever technical way, we can then literally balance the Earth's temperature, and the issue of climate change can go away. And we've had about 10,000 people putting applications forward, and we want thousands more, because and I'm sure there is somebody out there who who will win that prize. And so I think that if once people get into positions where they can make a difference, they just got to really think, like the moonshot idea. They've got to really think large and make a real difference.
The thing that, to your point, what structures can we create through this prize? We did a thing called Solve for X, through the question we just got with Endeavor, Skoll Foundation, different kinds of ways to help very talented people out in the world who already have great ideas for this and maybe working in their lab but they can't get funding, or people who might have a great idea if we just asked, kind of posed the question, they're like, I'd love to work on that and I have a thing. How do we get ourselves in more of that structure to be open for proposals? And so I really applaud this kind of, whether it's contest-based or some kind of structure framework. It's not unlike here in Silicon Valley, the VC structure that we have, but that's been quite limited in a way. Certain kinds of people have been able to get in because of unconscious bias, far less women and minorities, slowly changing. But really, the more we Kickstarter or Indiegogo this, the more we open it up, the better.
I think we need an accompanying mindset shift, though. I mean, Elon was referenced once in this conversation, and I'm reminded of a comment he made about innovation around first principles. He said, what inspires me is getting back to the first principles of physics, and that frees me from the constraints of how things are done today. Because the way things are done today isn't necessarily the right way to do things, right? And in the social sector, the first principle is really that all human beings have inherent worth and dignity and should be treated the same, or should be at least given equal opportunity. And I think if we really believe that, then so many of the institutions that we've built up over the last several centuries need to be demolished and rebuilt. So prisons, schools,
including government. I mean, but I'm not joking. I mean, it honestly needs a complete rethink. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
It's broken. It doesn't work. And if government doesn't work, a lot else doesn't work below it.
But I would say, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, but even Pope Francis now has gone on the record saying that our economic systems really need to be reevaluated. A system that creates billionaires while half of humanity is living on less than $4 a day, and where a woman dies every minute and a half in childbirth now in 2014, because so many women in developing countries have zero maternal care. So these sorts of disparities shouldn't exist if we get back to that first principle that all human beings have inherent worth.
As a sensitive billionaire,
Sorry,
I just arrived from a conference at the Giving Pledge where we're going to be giving most of our money away. You'd be pleased to know. Anyway.
You're one of the good ones.
But it's your kind of leadership. It's this kind of thinking.
Right.
And Professor Yunus says you need a dollar to catch a dollar. And helping the people who are out there to be respected, to be equal, and to be able to do the thing. Milan Vavir, who was our ambassador for women in the State Department, was with some women in Afghanistan, and they said, stop thinking of us as victims. Think of us as leaders, and let's team up, and let's get them resources. And the way you're approaching things is exactly in that model. It's a very 21st century model. It's very respectful to entrepreneurs in the way that we're thinking about it.
I think of it as a responsibility. Once you get to a certain level, you need to go back and you need to think about how to reinvent some of these systems.
Right.
And it's great to see what you've been doing. And I hope that more people are inspired by that to be able to reinvent these systems that are nearly broken.
Yeah.
And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with billionaires, especially when
Especially when they're trying to help.
Especially when they're trying to help. But I think that the point is that the ceiling doesn't matter so much; it's the floor that matters, right? And if we can bring everyone up to a certain floor where they can all enjoy 3 meals a day, education and culture, etc.
There is something wrong with billionaires if they're not going to use their money constructively, and I think that there may be something wrong with there may be something wrong with billionaires as well. But I think capitalism needs a relook, government needs a relook, and these sorts of things should be addressed. Where I think we could have a world over the next 10, 20 years where we can pull most people out of poverty. And every decade it's happening, and all of us in this room and listening have got to work hard to get there.
Well, I want to take another question from Google+. So we're going to stream in Alexis Pantanzis, and he's actually calling for more regulation. Did I read this right? You want more regulation?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a difficult name. Together with Emilios, we started a business in Greece. It's the first direct-to-consumer insurance company. And in a place like Greece, where the financial system has just collapsed, you need fairer rules. And this is something that you can only achieve with more regulation coming into the game. Just to give you an idea, the banking system in Greece collapsed from 28 different banks to 4 banks that now control 93% of the market. And unless you have stricter regulators in place, it's very hard for any new company to come in and disrupt. So companies like ourselves get starved out just because you have an unlevel playing field. And as somebody said in the panel, you cannot play by the rules that somebody else created for them. We think that you need more and more modern, I guess I would say, regulation.
So thoughts about regulation?
Well, I mean, I sympathise. I think in trying to start a banking in somewhere like Greece, if you don't have really good regulation for startup companies to enable them to do it, they'll just never get a foot in the door. And so, in that sort of situation, you definitely need regulators to help.
Well, when you're innovating, you're going to do more than just the innovation of your business. You have to look at all of the issues around it to really disrupt things. And usually, maybe the business takes 100% or 150% of your time. You need another 150% of your time for taking on these governmental regulations or illegal patent system, or what I think of as illegal uses of the patent system. You have to invest more time, and you have to make sure that you're not just doing your job, but you're trying to clear the route in front of you. And it takes a lot of relationships, a lot of time and effort. And unfortunately, it just is what it is. Hopefully, you can get other entrepreneurs or other investors who all have those connections, who actually give money to those politicians who can help to get your message out.
But often you're going to find that you might be in a fairly unique position in Greece, and that you can actually educate the regulators. You can go to them and you can sit down and say, look, imagine you are trying to do this, and these are the hurdles we've got to overcome. and try to embrace them into your problems and get them to urgently try to help you. And I think that's the only thing you can really do.
You have organizations or your footprint all over the world, right? So which country would you say is the most friendly? And probably also is interesting, which is the hardest to deal with?
Good question. And I'll start by saying that good regulation could also be called design. I think regulation has a bad word in Silicon Valley, but smartly designed government systems can actually enhance innovation, right? If the rules are designed in the right way. And I would say, in our case, where the rules have been designed pretty well, I've been surprised, is Kenya. We have about 400 Samasource workers in Kenya now, people who are youth from slum communities who no one would ever have imagined could do digital work. And they're doing work for some of the top technology enterprises, partly because the government built an amazing plan. It's called their 2020 plan. That's designed to use technology to bring jobs to the next generation of Kenyans. And they were really inspired by the Indian outsourcing model. And a lot of their government actually sent a group of Kenyans to India to go and study how they use technology to create jobs. And it's amazing to me that young people in slums in Kenya are using Facebook on their mobile phones, are extremely tech savvy, much more than a lot of people I know even here. I'd say that one of the hardest countries for us to work in has been Haiti. And I think it's less about the regulatory challenges and more about the infrastructure and lack of middle management, but we still made it work. We actually employed people after the earthquake to do translation of text messages in the middle of Port-au-Prince. So it's still possible, even in Haiti, to use technology to innovate. And I think fundamentally, where there's a will, there's a way. There's always someone who gets it in government that will listen to a rational argument, and when you can present evidence that you have a good program, you can kind of finagle your way in.
There's also a breakthrough in Kenya in general. We have a great team from Kenya there, but the Ushahidi was founded in Kenya, which is the crowd. When there's a crisis in the world, it's the way that people communicate. The iHub Nairobi team was early there, so this kind of startup center that we have here in Silicon Valley, they have that in Nairobi for a decade now. So a lot of times government doesn't have technical people in the seat together. I call it the RFPing. It's almost dismissive. Technology is something like facilities. You sort of write up what you want, your wish list, and then send it off. Well, we can't make any of the products we make if the techies and everybody else weren't working together and in dialogue as teammates, co-teammates. And what I think Kenya has done so fabulously is that the technologists and the regulators and the government folks are actually in dialogue together, unlike most developing countries where it's very separate.
Richard, I'd also love to hear, you've started airlines in many countries, businesses in many countries, your take on the hardest and the easiest countries to work with.
Yeah, I mean, America's by no means perfect. I mean, we
Really?
Again, going back to our airline, Virgin America, I mean, we the big carriers managed to keep our planes grounded on the ground for 2.5 years. We had, full staff sitting in San Francisco, wanted to get going, and America said that, even although we structured the company correctly, any hint that I would have any control over a company, and it's not as if Britain and America have been at war for many decades, would mean that we couldn't get the license, and but anyway, in the end we got there, but the big carriers managed to drain tens of millions of dollars from us in the process, so I think America has its issues. I mean, a lot of countries have their issues, and it's just But again, I think in the end, if what you're doing is positive, if it's going to make a difference, if people believe in what you're doing, that in the end, most likely, right has the might to win through.
All right. Can I tell you my favorite Virgin America story?
Far away.
Okay, so I heard this apocryphal story that one day someone didn't get her meal delivered, and so since you have wireless, she tweeted out that she didn't get her meal delivered, and Virgin America was monitoring Virgin America mentions, and so saw that and contacted the pilot, and the pilot contacted the flight attendant and told the flight attendant to go serve this person the meal. So, but wait, that's not the good part. Yeah, that's not the good part yet. So then I thought I would test this theory. So one day, I'm on Virgin America, and I send out a tweet, like, I'm sitting in 2C, it's my favorite seat. I'm sitting in 2C. If you're so good in social media at Virgin America, I want you to tell the pilot, to tell the flight attendant to bring me a Coke. And this is a true story. So I'm sitting there waiting for my Coke, and then I'm of course still on Twitter, and I get a tweet back that says, "Guy, why don't you just ask the flight attendant?" That's it. I love Virgin America. I think that was Amy Lunardini doing that herself. But anyway.
Cheeky.
Yeah. So anyway, another question. I'd love to know from you, what's the first thing an entrepreneur should do? Because many entrepreneurs believe that they should boot PowerPoint, or they should boot Word and write a plan, or they should boot Excel and create a financial plan. But what's your advice? What's step number one for an entrepreneur? So I'll start with you, mate.
I think you talk to people.
Okay.
There's a great Y Combinator rule. I don't think you can't do the project alone. You have to, if your idea is good enough, at least your roommate will believe you and come with you, is I think their theory. And so a lot of entrepreneurs think that it's so proprietary, I can't tell anyone, and they maybe tell a few, but the more you share, the more likely it'll iterate. People ask you tough questions. When we're doing Solve for X work around Moonshot Pioneers, we have an idea called 2/3 yes and, 1/3 yes but from improv, like how do you help build on the idea? And so as you go ask questions, be aware of the people who are going to say, oh, you can't do it. Don't listen to them so much, but listen for smart ideas in there. Elon, actually, in that same point when he was saying, I look at the fundamental physics, and I also look for teammates who ask me hard questions. Not someone who says, that's never been done, so it can't be done, but someone who says, here's some physics reason why that might be hard, etc. So it's in those conversations, you're going to debug whether to do it.
Well, if I go and talk about my idea, someone will steal it.
That's what I'm talking about, is it's not going to happen. It might happen, but like that 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration from the quote, it's so much work to do your idea that the more you talk with people and hone it, and maybe you want to do this huge thing, somebody in conversation is going to help you do something simpler and get you launched, or something adjacent. Tony's shaking his head yes.
First step is absolutely talking to people. Talking to people you trust. Don't talk to your parents. They're going to say you're going to have a great idea.
Unless they're
it's
entrepreneurs.
A great idea. But literally talk to people. I had the problem though where I've talked to individuals at the very beginning stages of a project, and they ran off with it. And so it's happened.
Yeah.
But again, you have to trust people. Yeah. You can't get things done in this world if you don't trust people and build a team. So just be cautious, but absolutely tell the right people, get the right people involved to get that emotional flywheel going. Get that emotional flywheel spinning, and you're going to attract more people.
Yeah,
and it's going to get, when you get into the details, it always gets more difficult. But when you have those people around you, go, oh, we can solve that this way, we can solve this way. There's going to be lots of opportunities to get over those hurdles much more quickly when you have a team. So you just have to talk.
And ideas
and don't be afraid.
Ideas happen simultaneously, so as you talk, you're going to attract advisors and teammates and friends, but also people who actually will want to join your project. And there's an obsession a little bit in the media with the founder, but really teams found thing. There's a leader who's the inspiration, but galvanized around them are people who believe in that. And especially Reid Hoffman always talks about the smart generalists. In the beginning of any project, there's this set of people who just show up, and in fact, sports teams call it hustle. They're measuring hustle. So when Michael Jordan's, or Kevin Durant is on court, who else is with them that is getting them the ball and moving and tracking those people? Have those people on your team. So it's sort of this early conversations, iterations, networking.
But there's one other key piece of it, is you have to have a little doubt. Like, you can get this emotional momentum spun up and everybody's all rah, rah, rah. You have to have a little bit of doubt inside. And that being really that you're pushing the edge. Because if it's all so easy, or everyone seems it's so easy, you're like, wait a second, what am I not looking at? Right. What risks am I not they're unforeseen that I have to dig deeper on. And that should also drive you to flesh out your idea and get more people involved to help you overcome.
I think a big piece of it, and this, talking to people helps, but it's finding a real problem. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who are like, oh, I really want to start a company, and it's like, well, that's great, but it should start with a problem that you want to solve, right? And the instinct to solve a problem. And you know, in the case of Samahope, I'll just give this example. I was in Sierra Leone with some Google folks. We were on a women's technology delegation, walking around and just talking to people and understanding how technology could help women there. And I went to this rural hospital, which is like one of the most depressing places I've ever been in my life. It was the only teaching hospital in the country with no electricity, medical students operating on cadavers with no refrigeration. You can only imagine, it was horrible. And I went, of all places in this hospital to go, I went to the maternity ward, which is like the absolute epitome of human suffering. And I met this doctor who was there, this Texan doctor who was delivering surgeries to people. He flies over 3 times a year and gives these surgeries to women who need birth injury repair. They get injured in the birth process, they come there, and many of them have these horrible conditions, and he operates on them. And I started talking to him, and this man was so brilliant, and what he was doing was so incredible. And I thought to myself, like, if only somebody videotaped him and put it online, like everyone I know would give him $5 instantly, right? And I started talking to him about the problem, and the problem he told me was fundraising. He's like, I'm a surgeon. I've delivered, 20,000 babies in my life. I'm an OBGYN, and yet I still have to fundraise, and this doesn't make any sense. And so the problem of fundraising for this guy is what ended up inspiring that site. But it really started with a very clearly defined problem, and then we kind of iterated on different solutions.
Yeah, I think so many of the best businesses are spun out of experiences like that, but either bad experiences that you have and you feel you can do it better, or bad experiences that someone else is having, and you can step in and help them, and those are often the very best businesses that get created.
Well, wasn't that the genesis of starting the airline? You were in the Caribbean or something, and the schedule sucked or something, so you decided to start an airline?
I was in Puerto Rico, and I was
trying
to get to the Virgin Islands. I had a beautiful lady waiting for me in the Virgin Islands. American Airlines decided to bump us, and I was determined to get there that night, whatever happened. So,
See, when you're a billionaire, you can tell that kind of story.
I was 27 years old, so I went back to the back of the airport, and I didn't have much money, but anyway, I hired a plane, I rented a blackboard, and I wrote, just for fun, Virgin Airlines one way to the Virgin Islands, $39, and I came out to all the people who'd been bumped, and I filled my first plane. And that's how Virgin got started.
Great story.
That is a great story.
I think it's important for people to be able to visualize your idea, to build that momentum and to have that conversation, So even times when we're innovating internally at Cisco, you got to get the mind share. You got to get people behind it to get the money and all of those things. And so we believe a lot in the visual prototype. Actually build something that simulates, doesn't actually do it, but simulates it in a way that people can see it. And when they can see it, they get behind it, and they get the excitement. You build that excitement.
Well, that's kind of the beauty of any website, right? You're 5 minutes away from having a website really working with Wix or something like that.
That's actually the beauty of software in general.
Yeah.
I mean, because we have, everything is moving to software. It just means you can iterate, you can crowdsource, you can, and that trend is continuing even with the infrastructure as well.
Let's take another Google Plus question. This is Miles Kubeka, and he is in the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship in South Africa. There he is.
Hello, everybody. My name is Miles Kubeka, as it's been said. I started a very disruptive fast food retail business, and what I found interesting is that certain industries adopt technology very well, or innovation, especially technology companies. And you find that other industries are quite laggard in adopting any kind of innovation. So we're trying to change the food industry. But Google X has come up with some really cool, exciting tech projects. So, I mean, as we've mentioned, the Glass, the Project Loon, and so forth. I find it can be very cool to innovate in a lab when you are well funded and you've got smart minds. What are the lessons we can learn in developing countries in not only trying to innovate in industries that are generally don't like innovation. I think my question I'll slightly direct it to Megan Smith.
Yeah, so to me, it's some of this cross-functionality that, what you're doing is you're taking people in this industry, you're adding technologists and others to bring solutions from other areas. I think cross-pollinating, a lot of people stay in their chimney. Even in the extreme, as an example, I was looking through something related to Liberia, and you were in Sierra Leone. There was a thing called the Poverty Reduction Strategy, which was written by sort of the powers that be. I think IMF was involved. And I was looking through the table of contents, and I noticed that ICT was missing from the rebuilding of this country. And so, to me, that was a cross-functional dysfunction that happened at a country planning level. And if someone pointed out to me that this document was written in 2008 and rewritten in 2011, and they left out the internet for the country. And I actually met someone, I'm like, what were you guys thinking? It seemed like a distant future. I'm like, this is 2014, let's write it in. So I found that was true for Sudan. And so these are meta levels that the IMF's document for the country of Sudan is missing internet planning. So that's a meta level of an example of this smaller, industry-centric food industry. I think what he's doing is brilliant, and getting teammates from other sectors working together is key. Second thing, it was interesting for, related to South Africa, but that the Greece team was here just a minute ago in the Hangout. I met some fabulous entrepreneurs who are part of the Google team in Tel Aviv. And there's a group called Campus we have in London, also a campus. It's just a gathering point for all kinds of entrepreneurs. It's not just Googlers. They were doing these sessions to help people who are founding companies. And it was not panels, it was, here's a table that's about minimum viable product. What's the demo? Here's a table about your business plan. People were just sitting down and moving around and collaborating together. And the idea of this group was, how do we help the first time entrepreneurs in? They literally all bought tickets and went to Greece for a week and sat with the entrepreneurs in Greece as an idea to help them. Because the point I was making earlier, in some of these countries, there's not necessarily the second and third and fourth and fifth generation entrepreneurs there to help you. So I think two things. One is the point of getting what he's doing, getting the industries cross-functional. And the second point of somehow crowdsource, find serial entrepreneurs either in your country or out of your country to help you with these challenges. There's definitely people who've disrupted the food industry in other countries. Can you find them somehow, given that we are globally networked in an inexpensive way now? So two ideas.
Certainly they can do Hangouts with them.
Yes. With anybody, and just go find them. People are really, that's what I love about entrepreneurs is, it's one of the things I love about Silicon Valley is people really want to help each other. We really were like true believers, and we want to help each other. And if you've got a great idea, people will help you in some form. They may not join your team, but they'll make an introduction, they'll give you an idea.
Okay. Let's take one more question from Google+. It's Nathaniel Pete, and he is streaming in from London.
Hi guys, I'm the CEO of GenX, and we produce solar devices, and we try to help young people by teaching them how to develop and assemble solar devices in rural Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Basically, my question is this. It's very hard for startups to find information and how to protect our ideas. Also, securing patents is extremely expensive for startups. How can entrepreneurs innovate without being pried upon by larger organizations with deeper pockets? We're really lucky that we've got Virgin Startup here, which has helped us out financially. How can we really try to protect our ideas from large companies?
Should be Tony.
Well,
Tony.
well, first and foremost, to protect your ideas, there's no one has a monopoly on ideas. You need to continually innovate. So the best way to stay ahead of everyone else is to innovate faster than these large companies. So by showing that there are new ways of doing it differently, and using social media so other people understand you're doing it, you'll create a bigger crowd. But keep moving. Don't think you can all of a sudden own an area and stay there and a patent's going to protect you. That's what those large companies think those patents are going to do for them, and they're really not. So you do need to protect certain key assets. Absolutely, there are innovations that you need to patent. And you need to do it to patent it in a proper way and get a really good, strong patent. So I'm not against patents. I'm really for great patents. There's just a lot of bad patents out there. So make sure you're making a great patent, but always remember that's just a defensive move. The offensive move is to always innovate and over-innovate and make sure you're leapfrogging yourself. And that way, the other side is not just going to be upset. They're also going to get, going to feel despair because they're not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts about this? Continuing to disrupt and building this defensible position
I guess
with offense?
Part of it is cultural, right? The best way to create, to stay ahead of the curve is to create a culture of innovation. And I think some of the bigger companies have a much tougher time doing that because they're bigger and they have to have rules and processes that smaller companies can get around. We've been thinking a lot about this as a smaller nonprofit in the middle of Silicon Valley that can't offer equity and can't offer the same pay as some of our peers. How do we really stand out? And so we've tried to build, we're rebuilding our culture now, but we're trying to build a culture that emphasizes innovation, that's breaking a lot of the traditional rules of working in a nonprofit, that allows people to a lot more autonomy than they might otherwise have. And so I think if you can differentiate culturally, then you can continue to attract the kinds of people that will keep you ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
Protecting your brand is important. And just as an amusing story, we came up with the name Virgin when I was about 16, but the intriguing part was that the registry office wouldn't let us register it, and they said it was rude. And so after about 3 years of battling with the registry office, I finally had the common sense to go to the dictionary, and I looked up virgin, and it went pure. Untouched, and so I sent them the definition of virgin, and they finally decided it wasn't rude, it was pure, and they let us register it. But if we hadn't registered it, obviously virgin wouldn't be what it is today. So registering your brand is very important, and although it can be quite expensive to do it internationally, but as soon as you feel confident, you should do that.
I also think there's another way to be bigger than just your small thing, which is partnerships and thinking in an ecosystem. So it may be that you can't be everywhere, but there may be great partners that you could share some of your revenue with and might be willing to do it on a rev share basis so that all boats rise together. And just thinking very cleverly about being sort of linked, not ranked maybe as Gloria Steinem said, it's sort of linked in a big footprint in a way that can really work. We did that a lot with Planet Out, which was the internet company I ran early on, and we called it being platform agnostic. We were running the gay community, LGBT communities on the web, on our website, but we also ran the LGBT areas of AOL, Netscape, Yahoo, Real Network, sort of everybody, and sort of being helpful to them with our content and sort of thinking about wherever you could be. So in this case, with this really cool solar technology, what are the distribution partners out there? Somebody like Barefoot College in the nonprofit space, or other kinds of distributors. Kicks the pumps, the Kickstarter pumps, and that
Habitat
great
for
partner.
Humanity.
Yeah, Habitat, others, and local entrepreneurs who are doing things, physical product distribute.
Let's take some questions from the audience here. What a concept, like analog people here. So, yes, do we have a mic runner, or how do we take Richard's away, give it to you?
Yeah. Thanks. Rob Meadows from Originate. So my question is, you guys have huge ideas, let's change the world, shoot for the moon, this is billion-dollar impact. My question is for the practical modern entrepreneurs out here, how big do you think an entrepreneur should start thinking? Should they be focused on their first dollar of revenue, their first thermostat, their first $39 flight? Should you start with $1 billion idea?
Okay, very good question.
Well, the way I think about it is frankly, you should always have that point of light where you're trying to get to that goal, but you have to, a lot of people talk about that goal, but they don't understand how to get from point A to point B and all the sub pieces that you need to, sub goals that you need to make to get there. So you have to just start with the means you have, but with a very big idea at the end. And you prototype and you try and you see where it's going to, if you're going to be on a trajectory of that goal. But at the end of the day, you really just have to believe that this is the right thing and keep cluing into your gut, because it's not always about the first dollar. Because sometimes it'll take 2 years or 3 years to get there. And by having other people in the team that we all mentioned here, they're going to keep that idea alive with you to get to whatever that right milestone is along the path to the long-term goal. So sometimes it's just making the prototype or making the technology work. Other times it's just finding the right marketing and branding to get whatever this business is off the ground, or the right partnership. So you have to look at each one and evaluate what's the right way to get to that long-term goal.
I would differ slightly in that answer. From the entrepreneurs that I know, I don't think that at the inception of a company that Bill Gates or Steve Jobs planned for a day where they had operating system, app, game, website, everything. I think at the very start of two guys or two gals in a garage, Woz and Jobs wanted to make some personal computers. And 30 years later, lo and behold, it's the most valuable company in the world. And so I think you should focus on, build this product that you want to use, and just hope to hell that you're not a psychopath and the only person who wants to use it. I believe in the small, with hindsight, God bless you. If you become the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, with hindsight, you could say, yeah, 25 years ago, I knew what I was going to do. This is the end game. But I think at the start, you focus.
I would second you on that. And for a lot of people, listening to this talk, their businesses, are local. They're hoping to make a difference locally. The fast food person, he wants to make a difference locally. It's got a great idea. And it may end up with 10 trucks or something, but but just getting that first truck right and getting all the bells and whistles right of that is critical.
I think in the social sector, which is saturated with lofty ideas, right? And everybody's like, we're going to change the world and we're going to do this. But sometimes we forget to question whether we actually have a model that works at a small scale, and look at that evidence and make sure that evidence shows that we're actually moving people out of poverty, and then we scale it up. When we started Sama, I had this crazy idea of using outsourcing to reduce poverty, but it was one of those lofty ideas that really hadn't been tested. And I remember that we started with one guy who had an internet cafe in Nairobi with 4 computers. And he and I had this idea, well, what if we could get him to hire local youth to do outsourced work for Bay Area companies? And we started at a very small scale using like Basecamp for project management. And then it kind of grew, and last year the Rockefeller Foundation put $100 million into this field that they're now calling impact sourcing. So, it inspired a bigger thing, but it often starts with one small concrete piece of evidence that shows that what you're doing works. And I think that's especially necessary in the social sector, where we don't have that unifying metric of profit to drive us forward.
The one big thing, though, is you have to, for investors, paint a bigger picture than what you can actually do as a small team with your first step.
Yeah.
So you always have to articulate where you think you want to be, but you definitely need to focus, and you need to get whatever that first milestone is done.
But with Indiegogo and Kickstarter, you may not ever need investors, right? Ideally.
I have a very, very different opinion on that. I think Indiegogo shows that there might be a market, but it's a market for a certain, very small demographic.
Okay.
To see that it breaks out from there, if you look, most of these projects are funded for the cost of whatever they're building. It doesn't really fund a team to get paid, to go on and being a real business. At the end of the day, it shows that there's a market, and then you take that market to financiers and get it funded so that it can be an ongoing enterprise. Maybe on Kickstarter it can do one project, but doing the second and third is a lot harder at a much bigger scale.
But it's a lot better to go to a venture capitalist with a successful Kickstarter project, right?
Absolutely.
That's proof of concept.
But to your original point, which was, you'll maybe never need funding, I don't agree with. You really want to make a big impact.
I think one of the key things is that focus. We big subscribers to Jeffrey Moore's, it's about being focused on that first pin, right? And if you can do that, and I think that these Kickstarter things actually allow that focus to happen, because you're going after this very narrow thing. What oftentimes happens is that we get distracted because we take our idea out And then everybody wants to do something just a little bit different with it, you know? And the focus, you'll never get there. You'll get too distracted and you'll never get there.
Okay. Any more questions from our audience here? Yep.
Hi, Derek Anderson from Startup Grind. I have a question for you. We've got people watching from all over the world, and I'm curious to know, many of you made your careers here in Silicon Valley. There's this constant pressure for entrepreneurs that they see the nests or they see Google, they see Facebook here in the Valley. They think, hey, I need to get there. I need to go to Silicon Valley and start my company, run my company. What advice do you have for local entrepreneurs who are trying to build something locally and trying to make something happen in their own city?
One of my favorite moments was talking to a wonderful guy named Tijan who runs Google Senegal. And he said to me, you know, I didn't have to choose between my country and my profession anymore. And so I really think the world is changing dramatically because of the network. And you can be anywhere. We were in 80 miles from the Iran border in Herat, Afghanistan with all these great kids graduating from computer science. There was a tech startup there. I think that the key is the networking. I mean, there's no substitute in some ways for coming to Silicon Valley and feeling, like I said, sort of the serial entrepreneurs here and the culture of like everybody's open to helping you. That happens in Silicon Valley, it happens around, but those hubs are growing. And Startup Grind, your organization is such a good example. In a Startup Weekend, Startup Grind, there's I think 8 TEDx's every day. Really? So no matter what city you are in the whole world, like I went on the Google developer groups, I clicked on directory and I looked at, I mean, everybody everywhere. I was talking to someone from Cameroon. I'm like, I wonder if there's a Google developer group in Cameroon you could work with. There were 8 cities. I clicked. She happened to know the 2 guys and the women who were listed. And so, boom. So even, it's almost like there's a divide where there's what we think is happening and this whole set of entrepreneurs who are everywhere doing our thing. And the more, no matter where you are, your most important thing is to get connected to the people in your city who are like you. And finding those kinds of meetup places, if you have a tech hub already, like iHub Nairobi, or the different places, if you have a Fab Lab, if you have a university where the people are gathering, find your teammates, TEDx, and then from that, start to get networked in different ways, find the funding community, that all those different, sort of the ecosystem that drives entrepreneurship, I think is really important.
I work for a company out of Sydney, Australia, and there are, you know, many hours difference, and we have this Google Hangout once a week, and I swear I have better communication with this company in Sydney, Australia than I used to have in companies that I was in, even the CEO of. It's really
my company out of business.
But I do fly Virgin Australia to Australia.
Visit to connect and vacation. There's vacation.
Well, I would say, leave this to the outsourcer on the panel to say, but I think local entrepreneurship, you know, outside of Silicon Valley and the major hubs can create a lot of really intriguing arbitrage opportunities. You know, we work in places where the cost of labor is much lower, the infrastructure costs are much lower, there might be raw materials that you can produce in those areas much more cheaply than you can in some of the big hubs. And I think, you know, as an entrepreneur trying to run a nonprofit in the Bay Area right now where benefits and salaries are growing so rapidly.
Real estate.
You know, real estate. We're actually even looking at places like Merced, which has a UC and great talent, but nobody's recruiting there. And we got the mayor to give us an open building downtown, which wasn't being used, a big retail space, and we're going to turn it into a building for us. And there's so many really interesting opportunities like that. That's only 2 hours away from San Francisco. So I've been telling entrepreneurs in Merced, like, stay there, come visit once in a while, you know, raise some money if you need to, but go back there and build there because it's so much more inexpensive.
And then we see them after they build something and get success, then they come to Silicon Valley and then they get more attention and that than just being one person on the street with hundreds and hundreds and thousands of engineers here.
The other group that isn't a physical location, but it's a group I'd say hides in plain sight, is women and minorities and people who haven't been in some of the more tech and entrepreneur areas. And so no matter where you are, step into these careers. There's hundreds of thousands of jobs open if you want to join into a team. If you have an idea, you know, you can found that. One of the things that's an interesting myth in the tech industry is that women and minorities haven't always been here at elite levels. I just helped a friend finish a cool new documentary called The Computers about the ENIAC programmers. Most people don't know that the first computer scientists in America are 6 women in World War II. Yeah, the ENIAC was the first all-digital computer created at the University of Pennsylvania, And my friend saw photographs of these women. She's like, who are they? And people said, well, they're modeling. And she said, I don't look like they're modeling. And my friend Kathy Kleiman, and you can get ENIACprogrammers.org. And she pursued it. She called Penn and she said, you're having an ENIAC reunion. They're very proud, they should be, of this founding. It's, elite founding. And then she's like, are the women coming? They're like, what women? So she found them. And she interviewed them when they were in their 80s. They wrote the first sort routine. They hired Grace Hopper, who Grace has invented subroutines. She coined the word bugging. She invented the idea of programming languages, that became COBOL, and now we have Java and Python, etc. I mean, these astonishing Turing level people. Sort of Einstein, Edison level people. Anyway, so my point is, even if they were a small group, they've always been here. Katherine Johnson, I just found, is an African-American woman, 96 years old, also a computer. It was a job like a lawyer. She calculated the trajectories for Alan Shepard, John Glenn, who wouldn't fly if Katherine didn't check the computer's math, and the Apollo mission. No one knows there was an amazing elite African-American woman on the Apollo team. So we started something called Women Tech Makers, which is just like to spearhead visibility. We've got 16 million programmers in the world. That means we've got 2 to 3 million women at least at the 10-15% numbers and growing. And so where are they? Yeah. So let's see them, let's get them funded, let's see that, underrepresented minorities, amazing people who are out there. So just sort of the point of you can not only be anywhere, but you can also be anyone. Any age group, and men, women, all that group. So just pushing people to come join us.
Yeah, age needn't be a barrier. As my mum taught me last week, she rang me up a year ago and she said, she's 90 years old, she said, I'm going to promote a polo match in Morocco to raise money for the Berber community. And I said, Mum, nobody makes money out of polo matches. You're going to get no help from your son. Come to me with anything else but not a polo match. Anyway, last week I'm sitting on the edge of the polo match. It's packed. She's made a couple of $100,000, and I was groveling at her feet.
So we're almost at the end of our time. How about we go one more round? I really, well, in a sense, I mean. What could they do to us? I mean, what are they going to do? Like
shut down the internet?
Yes. Google going to shut down the Hangout? No. I mean, okay, we'll take your question. Go ahead, fire away.
Hey everybody, I'm Beanie, owner and a chef of Beanie's Kitchen, and this is open to the floor. I have written, as small businesses in an industry, family food businesses that feels had to be disrupted, what would you all suggest for entrepreneurs like us at La Cocina?
Well,
does everyone know what La Cocina is?
No.
It's an amazing organization. You should describe it.
I need your help. I work there as an owner and a chef, but he's the best person to describe. Caleb, would you be
while
here,
he's
please?
coming, I've just got something to do here. I don't think you saw the invite, the rules.
Oh no! All right, okay.
Cut it.
All right, well.
La Cocina is a...
Good sport.
You look a lot better.
Okay.
La Cocina is an incubator kitchen who specially helps women entrepreneurs to formalize their business and uplift. We have 44 businesses in total. 80% of us are women, and they have like whoever gets the women who have started business from there. They are normally all single mom and then started their business from informal. But now with their help, let's say about me, I started as informally, and then now my food goes to Whole Foods and other places like Drivers Market and other, most of the city offices and all. So basically it is helping for all the women who cannot lift themselves and who has not a good cash flow. So my question goes opening the floor.
Great.
And La Cocina is a nonprofit that's just down the road here in the Mission.
Right.
And some of the best, I think, local restaurants that have come out recently are from La Cocina. So I think it's a great model that should scale in every city.
Yeah, and you're exactly what I'm talking about, which is help people like you when you have your ideas, to be able to do this amazing work on behalf of the community and your vision. And one of the things I might say is that there's a lot of unconscious bias in the world that we've grown up with. Just as a total, children's media is 3-to-1 boys to girls on screen, and 80% of the jobs are held by male characters. So Gina Davis, who did this research, said boys will be boys and girls will be boys if you want to do this kind of work. And we've got to change that. We've got to work with Hollywood. But we've been doing unconscious bias training on all Googlers, just because it's in us. It's systemic. We grew up with it. We actually didn't celebrate a woman's birthday in Google Doodles, like near zero, for 7 years. And we had no idea, would Google really do that? No. But it was unconscious bias because we were celebrating history. So Isaac Newton and the history is biased. And so now the team's at 50-50, and it's digging deeper to find those amazing people like Katherine Johnson and others. So in the unconscious bias that speaks to this, one of the data points is if there's 10 characteristics for a job, men on average will apply if they have 3, and women on average will apply if they have 7. So that means if you're looking for employees or if you're trying to decide whether you could found something, the women might be thinking, oh, I just need to do a little more work. I need a little more qualification. Well, you don't. You can have 3, not 7, and you'll be able to figure it out. And just looking and having that courage, not only as helping each other, but seeing that you can do it. So congratulations on the amazing work.
Thank you. All right.
Can I just add one other thing to it's so nice to have another woman on a panel like this, by the way. Thank you.
In the film Nemo, there's only one
time when,
you guys are going to be outnumbered really soon.
Richard, I wish I could say it's so great to have another billionaire on the panel. Except I'm not a billionaire, so I can't say that.
But I wanted to share because I think it's not said enough. We think that we've solved a lot of the problem, and I have men tell me, you're a little bit too strong on some of these issues. Honestly, you guys have come a long way, and I'm like, okay, women produce 66% of the output around the world. They earn less than 10% of the income globally and own less than 1% of the assets. So in this country, it's a little bit better, but we have such work to do. And I feel like part of the challenge is that women don't demand ownership enough. And I think that's starting to change. So, thanks for your comment.
As a man, I'm going to keep my these scissors well away from that.
You're in the most precarious seat between the two.
I don't want to slip up here. No, look, I think men have got to do all we can to help, women, be fairly treated all over the world. I mean, in some countries it's horrendous. In the same way, in a lot of countries, in the same way that the gay community, what's happening in Brunei at the moment. They've just announced they're going to stone gay people. In Uganda, lock gay people up for life. I mean, there's just some horrendous things going on in the world, and I think business people with their influence have got to play our part in these kinds of issues on a global basis. Use our financial muscle, use our trading positions in countries to get out and speak out and try to make sure these horrible things do not happen, either to women, to gay people, to minorities all over the world.
I just want you to know that I work for a woman, the CEO of Canva is a woman, and she's 35 years younger than I am. So
I know her. She's amazing.
Yeah,
I was there when she raised her seed round.
All right, great. So how about we go around and everybody just give one last tip, and we'll wrap this baby up. So one last tip for entrepreneurs.
Well, I think innovation is humanity's highest calling. I think we're all programmed to do it. And so my tip for entrepreneurs would be make sure that your innovation truly benefits humanity. Don't just work on the problems that affect the 1%. Don't just work on the problems that will maximize profits in the short run. Challenge yourself to find a real problem that will motivate you to find a solution for many years to come.
All right, thank you. Richard?
Well, I'll second that. Just say, screw it, just get on and do it.
All right.
Exactly.
I say passion. Like, stuff comes from inside. People do things, and if you really follow your passion, you can be unstoppable. And collaborate well with great teammates, and include lots of people that you wouldn't expect.
You had two things. I was going to take the collaboration, but yes, absolutely. You need teammates. You need absolute wonderful teammates. You can't do it alone. And suppress your ego and make sure that other people understand that they have great ideas too, and acknowledge that.
I would say there's a great opportunity that's happening right now. And in my career, I've seen the mini computer and I saw the internet. And you know what? The Internet of Things, we're going to go from 10 billion to 50 billion things connected. We're lighting up the rest of the physical world that hasn't been lit up before. And there's going to be great value in all that data. So thinking about data science, thinking about these new distributed compute applications that can take advantage and sum up the data. It'll solve some of our big problems around water, around energy, and I think there's a very exciting thing that's happening right now in there.
All right,
yeah.
thank you. I have one more story for you, Richard. So this is about, it must be about 10 years ago. You and I are both speaking at a conference in Moscow, and we were both in the speaker ready room, and you came up to me and you asked me if I flew on Virgin, okay? And I was honest, and I told you that I had never flown on Virgin because I basically focused my flight at that time on United Airlines, global service, the whole thing, right? And so at the moment that I told you that I never flew on Virgin, I only flew on United, you got down on your knees and you polished my shoes with your jacket. So now I'm going to return the favor. Right now, I'm going to polish your shoes. So, yes. Just ask Abby. I'm on Virgin America every week.
Can I hand this in for an upgrade?
So, thank you so much. Thanks, audience. Thanks, all the people on the hangout. Thanks, Guy. Thank you. Great panel. Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
Great job.
Guy.
Howdy.
Really nice. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Melanie's awesome. We're part of the MySpace.
Oh, you are?